There's that whole idea, what if we were just a brain in a vat? This is often posed by philosophers, except we are a brain in a vat. That vat is our skull. Everything that you perceive, feel, hear, think, it's all action potentials. It's all just, it's neural spikes. And it feels so real. It feels very real. These are all impulses from neurons, what's called a spike.
In the past century, quantum mechanics revolutionized our understanding of physical reality at atomic scales, while general relativity did the same for our understanding of reality at large scales. There is a growing number of scientists who think that nature itself is the result of quantum computation. According to them, the world would, in the last instance, be rooted in physics, particularly quantum mechanics, and would reflect the properties of elementary particles and fundamental forces. Some contemporary world perspectives approach objects and physical laws in terms of information and computation, to which they assign subsequent responsibility for the complexity in our world, including responsibility for complex mechanisms and phenomena such as life. One such world perspective held by many computer scientists and philosophers is the simulation hypothesis, which provides that all of reality, including the Earth and the rest of the universe, could in fact be an artificial simulation. Some versions rely on the development of a simulated reality, a proposed technology that would be able to convince its inhabitants that the simulation was real. The idea that we are living in a simulated reality may seem unconventional and irrational to many of us, but it is a belief shared by some of the brightest minds of our time. If you analyse the history of video games, there is a clear innovation curve in the quality of games.
Like say 40 years ago, you had video games. The most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like two rectangles and a dot, and you're like batting it back and forth. And that was like, wow, that was a pretty fun game at the time. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic, and millions of people playing simultaneously. And you see where things are going with virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you extrapolate that out into the future with any rate of progress at all, like even 0.1% or something like that a year, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. And then it seems like, well, how do we know that that didn't happen in the past? And that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
Augmented, virtual and mixed reality technologies are evolving rapidly and becoming more powerful by the day. However, they are still easily distinguished from the experience of actuality. Participants are never in doubt about the nature of what they experience. To create immersive experiences that are VR and mixed reality require complex scenes rendered at very high frame rates. So, based on the current rate of progress, in 50 years, or even 100 years, VR could become indistinguishable from reality. A gamer could immerse themselves in a simulated setting and may at some point find it difficult to distinguish reality from fiction. The gamer could become so immersed in the fictional reality that they do not realise they are simply a character in a simulation. That leads us to an ultimate question: are we living in a simulated universe? Ray Kurzweil claims that in the future, we could be able to simulate the human intelligence as original as the real thing. So when that happens, there won't be a difference between a simulation and our reality. In the future, we could merge with an AGI, which would enable limitless possibilities, one being that we will be able to create a whole new universe. In theory, our whole universe could have been created by some superintelligence, and it's quite plausible that our universe is a computer simulation.
Sometimes I talk about we'll be able to simulate human intelligence, and then some philosophers come and say, well, that's a simulation and that's not the real thing. And if you simulate something as precise as the original thing, I don't think actually there is a difference. This universe could have been created by some super intelligence in another universe. So maybe our whole universe is a junior high school science experiment of some super intelligent junior high school student in another universe.
According to Kurzweil, we are just information structures. You could argue and say that there are molecules and atoms that make you up, but in reality, depending on what cell it is, it turns over in 2 weeks. But parts of the neurons change over very quickly, so we are completely different molecules and cells that we were just 2 weeks ago. However, we are not completely different information. Elon Musk also supports the idea that we are living in a computer simulation. According to him, there's a 1,000,000 to 1 chance we're living in base reality.
I mean, there's some interesting things here on the virtual reality front. Just on the whole notion of a simulation, which is that if you extrapolate into the future and say, well, how good, let's say, will video games be in 100 or 200 or 1,000 years from now? If there's continued improvement and you're in a full body haptic suit with a sort of surround vision, and it becomes, beyond a certain resolution, indistinguishable from reality. There are likely to be millions, maybe billions of such simulations. So then, what are the odds that we're actually in base reality? Isn't it 1 in billions? What's outside the simulation? There may be ways to test whether it's a simulation. There might be. I'm not saying there aren't. But you could certainly imagine that a simulation could correct that. Once an entity in the simulation found a way to detect the simulation, it could either restart, pause the simulation, start a new simulation, or do one of many other things that then corrects for that error.
To understand how we could be living in a simulation, one needs to explore the simulation hypothesis or simulation theory. Bostrom developed an expanded argument examining the probability of our reality being a simulation. His argument states that at least one of the following statements is very likely to be true. 1. Human civilization, or a comparable civilization, is unlikely to reach a level of technological maturity capable of producing simulated realities, or such simulations are physically impossible to construct. 2. Comparable civilizations reaching aforementioned technological status will likely not produce a significant number of simulated realities, one that might not push the probable existence of digital entities beyond the probable number of real entities in a universe. For any of a number of reasons, such as diversion or computational processing power for other tasks, ethical considerations of holding entities captive in simulated realities. 3. Any entities with our general set of experiences are almost certainly living in a simulation. 4. We are living in a reality in which post-humans have not developed yet, and we are actually living in reality. Some speculate that simulations could have been created by an advanced artificial superintelligence or even an alien species. The truth, however, is completely unknown. Neil deGrasse Tyson also finds it hard to argue against the simulation hypothesis.
You look at our computing power today, and you say, I have the power to program a world inside of a computer. Well, imagine in the future where you have even more power than that, and you can create characters that have, for example, free will, or their own perception of free will. So this is a world, and I program in the laws that govern that world. That world will have its own laws of physics and chemistry and biology. Now, you're a character in that world, and you think you have free will, and you say, I want to invent a computer, so you do. Hey, I want to create a world in my computer. And then that world creates a world in its computer. And then you have simulations all the way down. So now you lay out all these universes and throw a dart. Which of these universes are you most likely to hit? The original one that started it, or the countless simulations, the daughter simulations that unfolded thereafter? You're going to hit one of the simulations. So statistically, based on that argument, which first appeared by a philosopher from Oxford named Nick Bostrom back in the 1990s, right when computers were becoming real enough to think this through, it's hard to argue against the possibility that all of us are not just the creation of some kid in a parent's basement programming up a world for their own entertainment.
Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? Then show your support by subscribing, ringing the bell, and enabling notifications to never miss videos like this.